Keith FITZ-GERALD. How are you, buddy?
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me. I wouldn't have missed this for the world. You're very kind.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming here, man. This guy is awesome. First thing he says is, Adam, I put on my shoes like any other man every single day. Like, bro, that's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things about this business, right, guys, is that, it doesn't matter whether you're the big guns, the little guns, just starting out, finishing late. It doesn't matter where you come in this business. Money doesn't care. And so, yeah, I do put my shoes on just like everybody else. And that's the cool part about this business. I believe, and I'm living proof, anybody can make it big in the stock markets with the right education, the right tools, and the right perspective.
All right, so Keith, thank you for being on. Can you give the audience a little bit of a preview? I know a lot of them know who you are, but who are you? How long have you been in the stock market, and kind of why are you a media personality for stocks?
Oh, well, let's tackle the last one first. I have no idea why I'm a media personality. I didn't start out with that in the mind. I began trading at 15 using money I'd saved up from cutting lawns. I was a hell of a lawn baron back in the day. Dinosaurs roamed the earth. Of course, you young guys, would not know anything about that. But I've been in the markets for now, I think it's, 43, 44 years. As an investor, a trader, an analyst, a consultant. It's just a marvelous place to be because no 2 days are the same. And that's what I really love about it.
Okay, awesome. Love it. So I guess let's get started on sort of the first argument here, which is Palantir. Why are you excited about Palantir, and why have you kind of been bullish? You've been speaking on Palantir when it was $8-9. We all saw you on Fox Business and CNBC, and we were so happy because me and Adam are here on YouTube talking about Palantir because we think we understand it, but no one on mainstream media is talking about it, and obviously they just have more distribution to reach those than us. So when someone like you goes on Fox Business and is like, "Yeah, this is like a real company, you should pay attention to it," for us it really means a lot. So I guess we'll start there. When did Palantir get on your radar, and why have you been bullish about the company?
Well, it's been on my radar for quite some time. And here's why. One of the things I've learned in the 43 some odd years I've been doing this is every investor will see a handful of companies like this in the course of their investing lifetime. And when you do, you really need to pay attention because there's only one Apple, there's only one Microsoft, there is only one Palantir. And despite what the naysayers think, that's the truth. That's just the way the numbers bear out. There's only one Tesla. You can go down the list. There's dozens of companies with visionary leaders and the goods to back it up. So when you see that combination, you better pay attention. So I've been looking at this company for quite some time. In fact, I knew about it before it went public, before it went through its direct listing. And then I've become very, very keen enthusiast on the company because it's the real deal. So I've been looking at it $5, $6, $7, $8. Even before that, I watched it all the way down, watching it all the way back up. It's a company that I think should be valued far more richly than it is, and it'll get there.
In terms of Palantir's AI moat and tech moat, there have been some people that have come out recently and said literally it is an AI imposter, meaning they are faking it, going so far as saying they're misleading their investors in terms of their AI capabilities. It has surprised me. I think it surprises a lot of us in the Palantir community. What is your response to Palantir is an AI imposter and they're just a glorified consulting firm?
Well, I'm familiar with the individual that said that. Clearly a bright thinker, clearly an intelligent analyst, but I think that individual is off base because if that individual were correct, then that would mean the Department of Defense is wrong. That would mean Gartner's wrong. That would mean half a dozen consultants are wrong. That would mean all the clients who are paying them hundreds of millions of dollars are wrong. You simply don't have that. So I think those comments, I'm not a lawyer, but I think those comments are bordering on litigious territory. So I'd be very, very careful. But here's the other thing about a stock like Palantir, right? And this speaks to how Wall Street works, and it's not pretty, is whenever you get a stock that's on a big run or it's got a lot of potential, you're going to see the naysayers emerge. In Wall Street speak, there's something called talking your book. And that's a very nasty practice where somebody goes on and poo-hoos a stock because they've already got a short position, or maybe the stock's down in the dumps. They start talking the book because they want to see a long go. It's a nasty way to play. Now, I'm not saying this individual is anywhere near that territory. What I understand is he's an analyst and apparently has no positions, but that doesn't change the fact that we live in a world today where clickbait and eyeballs count for more than investing in the stock does. I'm an investor. I'm old school. I'm going to stay with the stock. So to me, if that's wrong, that's like calling Apple chip manufacturing, valuing it like Intel. That's like saying that somebody like Microsoft isn't making the products it does. So to label it an imposter, That's a stretch in my book.
Keith, question. Do you think that Palantir is an evil company?
An evil spy company that is working in with the Illuminati to be able to conspire across the world and cause terror. As many people have called it, a black box technology that's just trying to, take over the world. Do you think they're an evil company trying to harness your data? And by the way, Keith, before you answer, I do think you are a media personality, because for the first time ever, we have hit 1,000 people live on the Market Open.
Excellent. Well done. You guys deserve it.
It's not because of me. It's because of you. Thank you for that.
Well, I was going to say, you guys deserve this. I mean, because what you're doing is really cool, because you're engendering real conversation with real people from around the world about a stock that is going to change the planet. And you don't see that in the mainstream media, because again, even the mainstream media, and I'm on it all the time, is driven by clicks and eyeballs and titles and news flow. And you guys have got something here, because you're sticking to the story, you're sticking to what's important, and you're helping people sort it out in real plain English, no $5 words required. So well done, guys.
Thank you so much. It means a lot to us. So again, your thoughts on, is it an evil spy company?
No, I don't think so. I mean, here's the deal, right? You can define evil any way you want to define it. Now, some people in the tinfoil hat club would argue that that's the case. I don't think that's the case. Maybe I define the word differently. Other people would argue that a gun company is that way, or a tobacco company is that way. In fact, when I was just starting out, I worked for a company called Wilshire Associates in Los Angeles, and we had to put together portfolios of sin stocks and sin-free stocks for our clients. And back in the day, it was alcohol, tobacco, firearms. These days, when it's involving big data, that decision is an awful lot tougher to make. So to me, do I look at it as evil? No, because that's the way I'm wired. I think it's doing a lot of good. It's working with the medical community. It's working with the defense community. It's working with all kinds of big data. I think it's easy to label it evil if you perhaps don't understand or can't see the optimistic side of it. It's easy to fall into the negative. But again, I think that's a product of our world today, fellas, rather than a story about the company itself.
Go ahead, Adam. Yep.
Keith, do you think that they get a bad rap because they did a DPO instead of an IPO, and that's one of the reasons why Wall Street analysts don't give it a lot of love? Like, even when you're talking about Palantir, I literally saw Palantir on a screen twice in my life on TV. So everyone's talking about AI, they'll say Palantir, but you'll never see a Palantir ticker symbol. And it's almost like so much hate, blackballed on mainstream media. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't think you're far off. And here's why, is that, Palantir, when it elected to go public, CEO Askarp was really, really smart. He said, this is about the shareholders, and it will always be about the shareholders. So he's going to go with a direct listing. Now, if you understand how IPOs work, they're usually a highly orchestrated dog and pony show where everybody makes money, the lawyers, the insiders, the founders, everything else. And when they come to the public, it's a misleading operation, because what happens is the public rushes in thinking they're going to get in on something from the beginning. But in fact, all that money that comes rushing in is the exit for everybody else. So yes, all the conversation I've gotten back channel is that Wall Street was inordinately angry that he went that way, because it meant lawyers didn't get hundreds of millions of dollars in fees. Investment bankers couldn't ply their trade. There was nobody handing out free shares to all the insiders. So to me, yes, they have every incentive to beat it up, to smack on it, step on it, stomp on it, whatever expression you want to use. But the interesting part is, if you look at all the transaction volume behind you, look at the list of institutional names that is starting to acquire shares, they were very actively poo-hooing the stock when it was down $5, $6, $7, even though they were accumulating positions. So this speaks to something I talk about all the time in the media and with our clients. You always do what Wall Street does, not what it says. Palantir is a great example.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that, Keith, because that seems to make a lot of sense to me. I'm 25. I'm a little bit younger. Adam's in his 30s, so we haven't seen as much as in the market as you have. When you say Wall Street's beating up and poo-pooing, especially through mainstream media, on stocks when they're at their lows, I mean, Palantir was down 70, 80%. Your argument to me, as someone who's been in the markets for a while, as you consult with your clients, is, look, if a company's the real deal, Wall Street wants shares as cheap as humanly possible, and they will create a narrative in order to compile up, which we've seen with 13Gs and 13Fs. They were loading up. And when it runs up, retail is going to chase it when it's at the top, because retail doesn't have the stomach to be able to get it at the bottom. Is that kind of what you're implying has been going on with Palantir?
Bingo. And it's not just Palantir. And this is a really interesting point for any investor listening to the broadcast today to understand, is that Wall Street wants to separate you from your money. That's how they work. That's what traders do. Everybody thinks this is a nice business, but that's not the case. You're trading with Darth Vader on the other side of your trade. If they can figure out how to separate you from your money, they're going to do it. And they've spent billions of dollars learning how to push your buttons, make you emotional, make you uncertain, make you scared. So the only way to win in a situation like that is to take away all the tools that Wall Street normally has at its disposal. Don't fall prey to the hype. Don't fall prey to the headlines. Don't fall prey to all the different documents that are flying around. What you want to do is focus on a company, look at what it's really producing, and then you want to make a determination. I call it the must-haves versus the nice-to-haves. If it's a must-have company, I define that as making something we cannot live without. That's what's going to make the world go round. If it's a nice-to-have company, it's going to be something that's an elective discussion, an elective expense. So for example, you take Palantir, big data, that is not going back in the bottle. We've created 90% or more of all the data in recorded human history within the last couple of years. Palantir is making that a must-have. They're finding problems that we didn't even know we had. On the other hand, a company like Peloton is as nice to have as it gets. You don't put an iPad on a bicycle and call it a business. I don't care what anybody says. That's the difference between a must-have and a nice-have. I submit that there are 10 to 15 Palantirs out there right now. This is the one we know about.
Keith, question. So right now, Palantir's main market is the United States. I would say their second market would be the United Kingdoms. I feel that Ukraine can be as big a market, if not bigger than the UK, but not as much as the US. By the World Bank, they're estimating the reconstruction of Ukraine is going to be somewhere between $400 and $600 billion. And now Ukraine comes out, the Ministry of Technology literally comes out and says, Palantir is our partners in the reconstruction in 3 different fields, which coincide with exactly what Palantir does. One is going to be defense, which is government military. One is the reconstruction, which is going to be literally the commercial side of it. And the other one is to make us a tech hub of Europe. What are your thoughts about the possibilities of this partnership with Ukraine?
Well, I tell you what, I would respectfully, I think you're on the right track. Respectfully, I would push back a little bit and I would take it out a little bit farther, because it's not just going to be Ukraine. It's going to be all the companies that are involved in reconstructing Ukraine. So here's the thing is we can talk about Ukraine, but I think what you want to do respectfully is go a little bit bigger, because you're going to have all the big oil majors coming in. You're going to have pipeline companies. You're going to have car makers. So there's going to be a lot of different things that are going to come together in Ukraine. And Palantir, I expect, is going to play a significant role in that. But I would view it through a little bit bigger lens, if that makes sense.
That definitely makes sense. I'm glad that we're thinking on the same path. It's interesting when you get to speak. All right, I have a couple of friends. I'm a little older than 30. I'm 40 years old, so I'm as old as you've been doing this almost.
You youngster, you.
Yeah. I've been in business for quite a while, for 20 years, so I have a little bit of experience. So I know I'm able to get into pre-IPOs, and I have some people that I know in the stock market that are analysts and brokers. And it's funny because they call me and they're like, hey, Adam, what do you think about Palantir? And it's so funny. I'm like, who am I? I'm somebody from YouTube. And they're like, actually somebody, right, with licenses. And they're like, hey, can you give us your opinion on this? And they always say that their colleagues don't understand Palantir and
Bingo.
they don't.
Bingo.
Exactly. And so
Bingo.
nice to speak to somebody who understands.
This is the heart of the issue, is that every sell-side analyst, and there's a great book by an analyst named Stephen McClellan, it's called Full of Bull, and I would encourage everybody watching this today to take it up, pick it up, read it, because you will never look at a Wall Street report the same way ever again. It talks about how that business actually works. But one of the things that the sell-side analysts do, and to your point exactly, is they have preconceived boxes, and if a company fits these boxes, they can check it off. And they say, oh, I talked about this, I talked about that, I talked about this. Palantir doesn't fit in any one box. It fits in lots of boxes. So the analyst, rather than taking the time to really understand what the company does and what its potential is, say, it doesn't fit here. It's not a data provider. It's not a chip maker. It's not this. It's not that. Therefore, it's a bad company. Do their homework, do their job, do the thing. That's how you get to the bottom of a company like Palantir. I've taken the time to do it, and I like what I see because it's an A-plus client roster. It's businesses that are growing 24, 40, 60%, depending on what they're doing. It's a land and expand strategy. The CEO is all about the shareholders and has been from day one. So, those are things that if an analyst, respectfully, there's a lot of good analysts out there, but the bad ones don't take the time to make those connections. And I think that's a disservice to investors.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here with Keith FITZ-GERALD. I'm putting his website right now in the chat. We have his website. We have his Twitter in the description. I highly, highly recommend if you care about Palantir and you are on Twitter, then you follow him on Twitter. Keith has been one of the mainstream analysts who has actually spoken about Palantir, not from an ideological perspective, but everything he has said. I mean, even the words land and expand, most of the bears don't even understand that concept. So that lets me know how much you've actually researched a little bit of the company and understand a little bit about what they're trying to do. We have 1,180 people here, the most we've ever had on the live stream. Thank you, Keith, for being here. My next question to you is around big data and AI. Can you speak? Now, you said on Fox Business, I think a couple of days ago, if you were not in big tech, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, et cetera, you missed the boat. And there may be still some time to get in. Valuations have gotten a little frothy, but you were claiming a couple months ago, look, Meta at 88, Google at $80. These are undervalued companies. They have big AI moats and they're continuing to progress. Can you speak to the value of data and artificial intelligence at scale over the next 10 years, where you think that market's going? Bloomberg says the market's catering at 40 billion a year. Do you kind of agree with that? And then secondary, after you answer that, where do you see Palantir's role in that market?
Sure. Let's tackle the first one first. Kind of repetitiously redundant there. I haven't had enough coffee. Here's the thing, right? Is if you look at the data, you look at the field, you look at what's happening. If you go back through history, which rhymes, it doesn't repeat, it rhymes. We saw the invention of electricity, distributed energy with regard to combustion. We saw the invention of antibiotics. We are looking now at something that can fundamentally change the course of human history. With regard to the data, for example, 90+% of all the data we have ever had in the history of humanity has been created, and it's accelerating. We are going to we must have, to use my expression, must have the capacity to deal with all of it. Everything from your toaster to your wallet to your refrigerator is all going to talk to each other. And it's not just going to be insignificant conversations. It's going to be, hey, you need some bread, go out and get it. By the way, I know you have these allergies. Oh, we need this medical thing. It's all going to be interlinked. So AI is going to be a fundamental acquisition point for every company. There's not a CEO that I've talked to in the last several years that is not planning to integrate AI in some form or capacity with their business. Now, along with that comes data security, comes defense, comes all kinds of other issues. But the fact of the matter is, this is one of the biggest in the history of humanity. So if you're not paying attention, you're not investing in AI as a concept, as a theme, I submit, get out of the markets, go home, live on a beach somewhere, turn off the news, because you're going to get left behind.
Keith, that's a phenomenal breakdown. I love your enthusiasm. ChatGPT comes out around 6 months ago, plus or minus. All of a sudden, people now understand what exactly, and ChatGPT is just the basics of AI, right? It's the basics of an LLM. Yeah. But people can now visualize what it is. I use it on a daily basis. I think you probably use it as a daily basis. I can't imagine not. I stack it with other AIs. How big a role do you believe this ChatGPT has on AI, which helps Palantir, makes their AIP, which they always had the capabilities, and in general, this broader market renaissance that's happening right now? And as you can see, everything's green tech, if you don't mind talking about that.
No, not at all. It's interesting because one of the great challenges with AI, right, is that there's a lot of studies, there's a growing body of evidence that computers and the internet are actually dumbing us down. They're making us stupider, if that makes sense, because we're getting lazy. We're not learning to think for ourselves. We're learning to look for information using Uncle Google or Bing or whatever search engine is, now ChatGPT. And so the question is, how are we going to use this information? When people first had combustion engines, everybody thought, well, what's going to happen to the horse and buggy? Well, they're still around. They're just around differently. And so ChatGPT, Bard, any of these other engines that are out there, we're going to have to learn to use them productively. If we sit back and accept what's being thrown at us, I think we're in a world of hurt. But the best companies, the best employees, the best people are going to learn how to harness that information, because suddenly they realize they don't have to do the grunt work. They can focus on what makes them unique, what makes them really intelligent. That's where I think ChatGPT, Bard, all those things come in. Because first thing I do, for example, when I look at it, and particularly if I'm researching something, is I look at it, then I'll verify sources, then I'll look across and I'll see what it really told me. Because if it just gave me a laundry list of crap I already knew, then you know what? I'm not gonna accept that. But if it gave me an aha moment that I can pull on and derive my own conclusion, that's where it's really valuable. That's where I think we're going to see some significant investment returns. Because if you look at Microsoft, for example, ChatGPT is probably going to put 30, 40, 50 bucks on each share price over the next decade. That's significant.
Yeah. 100% agree. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here with Keith FITZ-GERALD. Keith, I want to talk a little bit valuation. The company is above a $33 billion market cap, trading above 16 times price to sales as of today. And revenue growth is maybe going to be 18%. At least that's what Alex Karp and co have explained to us in terms of their guidance. My question is, do you think they're sandbagging some of the numbers? Do you think this valuation can hold up with those numbers? How do you kind of feel about the overall valuation of the company?
Well, that's interesting, because that speaks to how an individual investor approaches a specific stock, right? My take is that, having done this for a long, long time, there are two things that have changed the concept of valuation within the course of my career. And if you go out even longer time frames, it's definitely changed. Valuation is a function not just of what a company's worth, but how much money is available to chase specific stocks. And in this case, what we're seeing over the last 20 years in particular is the rise in liquidity has fueled an overall rise in the marketplace. So the rising water raises all boats is very, very true. So valuations to me are not necessarily an absolute like they are for many people. I think they're a relative barometer. If you buy off on the argument, and I do, that the markets have an upside bias over time, then what that really is saying is not that the company's rich in the rearview mirror. It's saying potentially that the company is very inexpensive based on what it's going to achieve. Obviously, there's going to be short-term bursts where prices go up and down, and you can use that to your advantage as an investor. That speaks to tactics and risk management, which is another whole topic. But longer term, the valuations don't bother me one bit, because I understand history, and I understand perspective, and I understand the linkage.
Me and Amit always have a back and forth, and we're very passionate about Palantir. And we say, look, you want to talk about valuation? We only know what we know now. We only see the surface. How can you value Palantir if a month ago we had no idea what AIP is, and then they come out and they do a whole presentation of literally evaluating an email, and from this email you have a million different scenarios. So on the surface, maybe somebody can make an argument Palantir is overvalued today based on what you know. However, how do you know what's coming out and literally right around the corner? So I think it very similar to what you're saying. It's absolutely moronic, and there's such an exponential growth, right? As Kathy likes to say, Wright's law, right? There's such an exponential growth. When it hits like a hammer.
Well, and that's a very, very important point to understand, because we know what we know, but we don't know, or we're not always good at recognizing what we don't know. And again, this is the kind of company that will change the world, which is why I think so many people are struggling with it. So if you're a day trader and you're looking at very short squiggles, then you know what? Company like Palantir is ideal for you to come play in. But if you're an investor, it's even more ideal, because all of that fuel, all of that energy that the day traders are going to expend, you can learn to harness. Every time there's a pullback, you can use that to accumulate a few shares here and there. As long as you're consistent in your approach, this is the kind of stuff that, as liquidity increases, works in your favor. And people forget. I mean, I saw it several times. Back in when the dot-com crash happened, people forget, but Amazon lost 93% of its value in market cap. I mean, think about this, guys. 93%. Jeff Bezos he had to go around to the shareholders and tell them it's going to be okay. The numbers will scale. Many of the same comments you're hearing about Palantir today, we've heard about Apple, we've heard about Microsoft, we've heard about Tesla. And if you buy off on the CEO, you buy off on the approach, you buy off on the products, I submit those are all things you can use as your advantage as an investor.
Keith, you're with us on the live stream. Adam and I have always rang the bell when we hit a new price milestone. We just fell below 17, but we did hit 17, so we got to ring the bell.
Woo-hoo! This is, all right. We couldn't have asked for a better run up for this interview. Like it's it's like, thank God, everything worked out perfect, right? The price is going up. Everyone's excited. Keith comes on. It's so good. I'm so excited.
No, Adam, you got it wrong. The price is going up because Keith is on the show.
That's true.
The only reason.
No, what's going to happen is
true.
tomorrow it's going to go to 5 because I was on the show.
Because you're on the show.
Yeah.
Well, so Keith, this is.
But I was just saying, this raises a really important point for investors right now and traders alike. You know, when you have a massive run up like this, right? We don't know whether that's because of a short burn. We don't know whether it's a dark pool activity. We don't know whether somebody's getting nervous. We don't know whether Kathy Wood is suddenly weighted in with a buy order. We have no idea. What we do know is that prices move quickly. So, for example, if you've got a long-term position, now's the time to think, okay, do I want to take a few profits? Have a nice dinner. Can I take some money off the table? If you're going to Vegas and you're winning big, you don't let it ride. You manage your risk, and people don't think about that. So I've known lots of people who've gone broke taking losses, but I've never known anybody gone broke taking profits. There's always a way into the fight, and the last thing you want to do is let a huge gain like this get the better of you. So I think it's going to continue. This doesn't faze me in one bit, but tactically speaking, this is the kind of stuff that you want to think about. You know, is Wall Street getting ready to yank the rug? That's it's called a rug pull in tactical trading. That's what Wall Street refers to, a rug pull. They suck everybody else in on FOMO, then they have a rug pull, and they make money because they separate all the scared money from theirs. But you know, if we know that that's coming and we know how to use that to our advantage, then I submit game on.
All right. Someone was asking for Keith's Twitter. It's in the description, but I'm putting it right now in the chat. 1,200 people here. If you are on Twitter, I highly recommend following Keith on Twitter. Keith, I want to ask you this question.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I wanted to go ahead, Alan. You go. Go.
Okay. So last night I had a guy come on the show. Okay. I don't know if you got to catch this live stream. And he was the author of the Bear Cave Report. And he's like trying to tell me, and it was just really hard for me to wrap my head around it. So I want to pose you the question that the types of multiples that Booz Allen Hamilton, KPMG, Deloitte, and Accenture get in the public markets, which is maybe 1 or 2 times sales, is what should be applied to Palantir because they're a glorified consulting firm with a little bit of tech, but they don't really have a moat from an AI perspective. And I'm over here saying, bro, they're getting $91 million from the UK military. They're getting $400 million from the CDC, like $90 million to protect the nuclear codes from the nuclear administration. And he's like, none of that matters. They're just a consulting firm. What is your response to those that say Palantir deserves a 2-3 price to sales multiple like Booz Allen Hamilton or Accenture versus an actual tech multiple because they're just a consulting firm through their business model?
Well, I would respectfully push back and say, A, I've got a different opinion, and B, so does every single one of the customers that probably employs both of those companies. You know, I think it's tremendously, I want to be kind here because, again, I think I know who said that, an intelligent individual, but I think absolutely the wrong perspective on this business. Again, it's like saying Apple should be valued like HP or Apple should be valued like, Dell computer just because it makes chips or like Intel. That's just not the case. There's so much more to it than consulting. The thing about Palantir that's really unique is the same thing that makes Tesla so unique. Tesla's not just selling cars. Tesla is rewiring power distribution at every level of the chain. Palantir is doing the same thing. This land and expand strategy, they get in, they solve specific client problems. When the client figures that out, they say, oh, what else can you do for us? How can we do this? It makes the client sticky, gives retention and revenue, it enables growth. I mean, there's just so many things that are different from a traditional consulting relationship. So I would submit that comment is interesting, but I wouldn't pay it a lot of attention.
That's fair. Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, Keith, a lot of people are feeling you in the comments. They're like, if they didn't know who you are, now they know who you are, calling you a brilliant man. I know you have...
Brilliant is a big word. No, I like I said, thank you, but I put my shoes on just like everybody else does.
I know you have a newsletter. I know you're also an author. Can you tell us a little bit about your newsletter? I know a little bit about it for the audience in case somebody wants to follow you, which I'm sure you're going to get a couple.
Oh my goodness, I'd be honored. Thank you very much. So I write a little something called the 5 with Fitz. And it's just literally, these are notes that I've written for my own use for years. And when COVID hit, somebody said, hey, you ought to publish those. I thought, well, nobody's going to be interested in that. But 5 with Fitz is free. There's no spam. It's excuse my French, a BS free zone. It's just literally stream of consciousness as to what I'm thinking about, where I'm seeing opportunity, how things are working. We have an irreverent take on it, but there's no $5 words. I can't think clearly if I use them, and I don't want anybody else to have to struggle with it. So 5withfitz.com, or of course on Twitter. And then if you really want to step up, we publish a monthly investment journal called 1 Bar Ahead, as in if you read it, you're going to be 1 bar ahead of everybody else.
Thank you for that.
I love it, Keith. Do we have 5 more minutes with you? Is that good?
Yeah, of course. This is your morning, man.
So
Thanks
this
for
is, I
having
guess,
me.
my last question. Oh, thank you for being here. I mean, look, we have 1,200 people here, so thank you a lot. I mean, again, these people are not here because of me and Adam. They're here because
yes,
of you.
they
so
are.
We really, really appreciate that. Yeah, hopefully in the future they'll be here just because of me and Adam. I guess here's kind of my last question, summing up a lot of what's going on with Palantir. I think cautiously that the valuation might be getting a little stretched because we haven't seen the growth, right? We have to see that 30, 25% at least growth, and hopefully the increased demand from AI is what's going to get us there, as Karp has basically been saying. And I think the market doesn't think he's saying BS, which is why the market's giving us that multiple. As you've said over the past 20 minutes, AI and big data is transforming the way we understand the world. 90% of the world's data was created 1 second ago. And so you need companies to be able to analyze and get through these types of challenges. Here's my question. In your opinion, and based on all the research you've done, is Palantir one of those stocks that you plan to hold for a while? That doesn't mean take profits here and there, but is it one of those companies that you genuinely feel, you know what, I think this is a generational play. I might be wrong at 2030, but if I'm right and I sold too early, even if I, there's a level of regret that's going to be there because you can't go back in time and buy it when it was $7. So what are your thoughts on holding the stock long-term over the next 10 years?
Well, that's a very simple answer. I am going to hold my shares because I believe in the company. I'm planning to hold them through at least 2030. I don't care about the short-term ups and downs. But what you're really talking about is tactics, right? So, for example, if you've got a hot stock like a Palantir, some days it's Apple, some days it's Tesla. Here's a thought: investing, trading is not an all or nothing decision. Many people think it is. You got to be all in or all out. That's not true. That's not how the pros do it. That's not how I do it. That's not how I advocate anybody else do it. If you learn to think like the tide, like you're a surfer, you want to look for that perfect wave so you can ride the big one. But meantime, you're going to stay out there. You're going to stay in the water. You're going to have a great day, right? So, for example, if Palantir has run up and you want to take a little off the top, why not sell a few covered calls on part of your position to bank some profits, take some money off the table, and get paid to do it? Then you can take that money around, turn around and either buy married puts to protect your position, or, for example, you can simply set that aside and continue to dollar cost in over time, because that then takes away volatility, takes away Wall Street's advantage. You don't have to look at the headlines. You don't have to worry about squat because you know you've already bought off on the assumption that the company's going to make it, and it's a matter of how you approach it, not necessarily whether this valuations are crazy or it's going up or down or this consultant says that or the bear report's out. I mean, those things go away if you have the right tactics, the right discipline, and the right approach.
Are you seeing this price?
The price is
Keith, do you see the screen when we pull it up or no?
Well, let me look away from the camera here and see what it is. What do we got?
Oh, so you have, I didn't notice you were on a camera.
I know
it's 17.
Yeah. I'm like cheerleading in the background. I'm like, I know Keith is not watching this price because he's the best interviewer. It's $17.10.
Wow, cool.
What a day!
He's like, I'm waiting until 2030, so it's just part of the plan.
Well, look, guys. I mean, yeah, like I said, so I've got two targets. People ask me about price targets all the time, and it's like, okay, my price target is actually time based. I want to see where this company is in 2030. I've invested accordingly. I'm going to continue. I hope I'm smart enough to build my position all throughout that time, but I'm planning to go to at least 2030, but I'm also planning to add to the position. Like I said, I hope I'm smart enough to do that. But, I've thought for a long time, this is a $50 stock. When it's going to get there, I have no idea, but there's zero doubt in my mind that it can get there. And this is exactly the replay. Every emotion in my body, every reflex I've got, I've been down this path before. I've seen it with Apple. I've seen it with Microsoft. I've seen it with Tesla. I've seen it with a dozen other players out there. People poo-hoo it because they can't believe that change is happening when they ignore the fact that the guy is really onto something, Karp, and he's really got a product that matters. That's the part that people can't connect. So second guessing yourself as an investor is hard not to do, particularly since we live in a world where it's 24/7 headlines and sensationalism drives it. Clickbait pops up all over the place. But learning to be successful in the markets is about being consistent, and it's about sticking to what you know. And this kind of company is clearly lined up with the right themes of our time. It's got a great CEO at the helm. There are lots of numbers that are going in the right direction. So all the naysayers, fine, they may have a point. They may even be right. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm going to continue to watch this company and continue to buy it, or at least that's the plan anyway.
On a broader thing, not just Palantir, in general, since you have 40 plus years of experience in this game, at what point are you not married to a stock? Like, how do you have an exit strategy? Like when you hit that beautiful Amazon, Tesla, you know what I mean? Like, how does that work?
That's a really interesting concept, right? And that's an interesting question because every investor is different. So there's no one size fits all. That's the beauty of it. What's terrifying is that one size doesn't fit all. So there's no, if you give somebody a hammer, suddenly everything's not a nail, right? You got to figure out how to use the dang thing. So to me, there's two things I look for. Number one, I ask myself every single day, are the reasons that I bought this company still there? If they're gone, if they change, I'm out the door like a shot. For example, I'll give you a recent one. Intel, I thought for sure that Pat Gelsinger, CEO, was going to really turn that company around. He's got a great vision, a great plan. I've met him several times. He's an interesting, clear thinker. But when they went into slash and burn mode on their dividends and all sorts of other things, and then Apple hit it struck its deal with Broadcom, that's the argument for owning Intel has changed. I was gone. I didn't care win, lose, or draw. I'm out the door because the fundamental reason I bought the company no longer exists. So if Apple all of a sudden announces it's going to make swimming pools and that's where they're going to put 95% of their stuff because Tim Cook wants to retire, I'm out the door like a shot. I'm not even going to think twice. But that isn't going to happen because that's not the kind of pivot that company would make. The second thing I'm going to do, for example, is I've got to understand where a specific stock fits in the portfolio. Many people think about stocks like they're collecting cars or they're collecting houses, they're collecting cards or some other trinket that they have in the jewelry box. That's not the way to approach this. You want to find a stock that's going to be a partner, something that offers value for years and years and years to come. And as long as that remains true and you see the value, Apple's another one of these things that I hope I'm smart enough to hold this for the rest of my life and pass on the positions that I have to my children and grandchildren someday. That's the view that I have of that particular company. So it's not a matter of specific price targets. It's a matter of timing. If I have a big gain, okay, I'll take a little money off the table, but I'm not going to let go of the core position as long as the number one thing I think, the reason I bought it is still there. It's an ebb and a flow, guys. It's not an on-off switch. And I think investors make a huge mistake when they think about it that way because then regret does come in. Then you feel like you've missed the boat. Then you get FOMO, all of which Wall Street wants. They want you unsettled. They want you emotional. They want you uncertain. And if you take all those things away, you keep your emotions out of the equation, suddenly it becomes very clear, very logical, and very calming. There's not a day that goes by that I'm worried about the markets if I'm doing my job properly.
I really enjoyed your answer. And one specific thing, I'm a father, had my second child. Thank you so much. She's my second child, 6 weeks old, and I try to make YouTube videos. Thank you. Yes. Out of nowhere, I became a father at 39. I'm like, whoo, this is different.
Awesome.
So I try to talk about other things besides for stocks. I always talk about like custodial accounts for your kids, stepped up tax basis, and how people borrow against their stock. They don't have to sell their stocks, and this is how rich people become wealthy and how wealthy people control the country, right? This is, this is what happens. So I really appreciate that you said my goal is to pass these stocks, the wealth, everything to my children. I really appreciated that specific sentence, and any father would understand what I'm saying. So shout out to you for saying that.
Well, thank you. Our boys are considerably older. One of them's 26. The other is 20 now. I can't remember when they were 6 weeks old. It passes the blink of an eye. So enjoy every moment of it, my friend.
Appreciate that.
It's a cool environment though, right? This is the other thing that a lot of people talk about. And, I'm living proof of this. If you believe that the sun is going to come up tomorrow, you need to live your life that way. You need to be wired that way, and you need to find a way into the fight. You need to look constantly over that horizon because, the sun's setting is not the finish of a day. It's the start of tomorrow. And I firmly believe that if you're looking for tomorrow, if you're looking for where the world is going, you're going to do one heck of a lot better in life and in the markets than you are if you're looking in the rearview mirrors all the time. So I have a very short fuse when it comes to people say, yeah, but, or this is impossible. Okay, fine. But over time, growth has never, ever stopped. Not in the history of humanity. It slowed down. Maybe it's hit a couple of speed bumps. But the right companies, the best companies, the ones that are world-class brands will always continue to power forward because they've got CEOs and shareholders who understand that vision. Politicians, bankers, the Fed, all they do is spend other people's money. So if you want to make it, you focus on the people who have a vested interest in lining up on your side of the table. That's the CEOs. That's the CEOs of the world's best companies. It's not the fly-by-night stuff. It's the big, dominant brands that are changing our world that you want to focus on right now, particularly if you're young and you're starting out, because you've got the one thing that I don't have anymore. You've got time. And you've got the ability to look at the world using tools that I could only dream of when I came into this business. I mean, we used to sit down. I had to call my broker, and then my orders round trip were 40, 50 bucks.
Someone told me you had to pay for trades. I was like, people have to pay to make a trade on Robinhood. I just like have some,
it would round trip was 40 or 50 bucks a transaction. Think about that for a second. I mean, and we used to quote stocks in fractions. So you get like 33 and an eighth versus 25. The bid asks were so wide you could drive a truck through them. I mean, it was ridiculous. And now you've got decimalization and you've got highly liquid markets. And of course, with that have come a whole host of other gremlins like dark pools and order flow and payment for order flow and, all kinds of other nastiness. But the bottom line is what I would give to have a do-over and be where you guys are today, because these companies, we're going through a transitional point in human history. And yeah, you can say there's a lot of dark stuff ahead. Okay, fine. But people want the world to fail, but they want more to see the world succeed. And if you understand that, you can look for those profitable opportunities. And that's how I'm wired, because the world's bigger than your garage. Get out there, see it, explore, look at what people are doing. And all of a sudden these investment opportunities, they just start flowing at you because you understand what's really happening.
So I wanted to add to that, but you're a very busybody. You're super active. I know you drive a motorcycle. You're a family man. I'm a little bit of a stalker, right? Can you tell us, in a good way, can you tell us how you balance the work with family, hobbies? And tell us a little bit about your hobbies. Is motorcycles your main hobbies? Like just go out to clear your mind, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. Not at all.
This will be the last question, then we'll let you go because we know what.
No, this is, like I said, this is your morning. You're very kind, and I appreciate being here tremendously. The discussion we're having with everybody. So yes, I love to wrench on classic motorcycles and cars. And the reason I do that is kind of twofold, because, when you're riding a motorcycle, it is an incredible experience that requires 100% of your brain power. And it's not for everybody, but the thing I like about it is when I go exploring, and I've had the good fortune to ride around the world, is I meet the most incredible people. We have a journey. You smell the air. You feel the temperature change. You walk in, you talk to people. When I walk into, or I drive into a village somewhere in the Swiss Alps, or I drive into a village in Oklahoma, nobody talks to me because I get out of my car. It's like, yeah, that's another guy in a car. But my wife and I pull up on one of the motorcycles, and it's like, hey, where you been? What are you seeing? Where are you going? And we've met the coolest people. And it's just really interesting because that's a part of humanity that you don't get to see otherwise. So I've enjoyed phenomenal apple pies in Oklahoma. I got invited onto a woman's porch. It was a hot day. She's like, hey, I just baked this pie. Come on in, have a conversation. Or we've discovered French fries in Idaho. Or I got to see some temples in mainland China because I was riding a motorcycle over there. When I took my helmet off, it started a riot because here's this foreigner riding motorcycle in the middle of mainland China. It was like, whoa, how did that get here? It was like an alien that dropped in from space. So I like it because I get to do something unique. And the vintage part of it's really cool because, investing is about taking in information. It's about learning to make sense of things that otherwise don't make sense. Riding a vintage motorcycle is much the same way. You can't just turn it on and flip the switch and be gone. You got to get the choke. You got to get the timing right. You got to get the gears right. You got to, there's a lot involved in the experience. And that's the crossover to investing. So fortunately, my wife loves to ride with me. We go out, I've been known to ride 1,000 miles for a cheeseburger just because of it. And it's marvelous. But balancing it, this is the interesting part. I believe that a strong mind and a strong body makes for strong life. It makes me a better husband. It makes me a better father. It makes me a better friend. It makes me a better analyst and investor. Because if your brain is working, if you're engaged and you're leaning forward and you're thinking positively, you can look at that mountain when you drive down the road. You can park the car and you say, I'm going to climb that mountain. Why? You don't have to. You say, because I can. And then you can run up that mountain, have a great experience, look at the environment, come back down, continue your journey. That's how I like to live life. Balance is tough. I play hard. I play fast because I want to live every last fiber I can on this planet, make as many friends as possible, live the way I believe we should. So that's, to me, that's how I'm wired. Mach 5 with my hair on fire, what's left of it anyway.
I love it.
Well said.
I love it.
Well said. Bravo. Well said, man.
Thank
well
you,
said.
Keith. I'm putting Keith's Twitter in the chat. Please make sure to follow him if you're interested on Palantir, the markets, or living life ferociously. And with
Exactly.
Keith, thank you for being on. We're definitely going to have you again one time. We mean a lot. You made this live stream the biggest it's ever been, so I appreciate it a lot. Thank you for being here.
You're very kind, fellas, and to everybody watching, thanks for spending a few minutes of your time with me today. You guys
Thank you. Have a great day, sir.
See you later.
Bye-bye.